Part 48. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 471. At that time, Mu Qingxin didn't tell him much about the Holy Mountain. Because she was captured by Li Qingnu and brought to Qingnu town for a long time. Even though she was a mountain guard, she didn't know enough about the current situation and was afraid that she might mislead Zuyun. Zuyun only knew that Tang Zhuyang had been to Muling Holy Mountain more than 100 years ago. Mu Qingxin told him that 100 years ago, Muling Holy Mountain was fixed in one position. Later, for some unknown reason, the Holy Mountain of Wood Spirit kept moving eastwards until it stopped behind the mountain of the demon-controlling Holy Sect. Zuyun was also shocked when he heard it for the first time. Had he ever heard that mountains could move? Could it be said that this mountain has also become refined through cultivation? He could understand the tree demon. After all, it was a type of life. As long as it could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and gain immortality, it would naturally be possible to practice Taoism. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as a holy tree. But Shan, okay. But Zuyun didn't wonder for long. Because he remembered something Ye Yang once said. Plants, trees, monsters, and stones can all become immortals. In other words, he has seen it before. And Ye Yang came out of Shiwanda University, and this sentence is widely circulated in Chuzhu, which means that he must have seen it. After thinking of Ye Yang, Zuyun then thought of his own golden escape technique, which would turn him into a metal spirit body. When I thought about it, I naturally figured it out. In this way, the Wood Spirit Holy Mountain is after the Demon Control Holy Sect. Moreover, since the demon-controlling Saint Sect did not continue to move, it means that the demon-controlling Saint Sect secretly used some method to restrain the Wood Spirit Sacred Mountain. Therefore, after seeing it with his own eyes, Zuyun decided to go into the mountain to have a look. Walking to the foot of the mountain, Zuyun climbed up the steps. After walking for about half an hour, he had reached the mountain gate at the top of the mountain. The two guards couldn't help but frown when they saw someone walking up. But when he saw Zuyun's face clearly, he immediately knelt down. I've met the acting sect leader. Zuyun exhaled through his nostrils, hummed, and walked straight into the mountain gate. Although he came in incarnation, he knew almost nothing about the demon control holy sect. Just when he was a little confused, one of the guards stood up, ran to Zuyun, and said quickly, in order to report to the acting sect leader, the second elder just left the sect to find you. Do you want to inform him to come back? Zuyun watched the people leave, but he didn't know that one of them was the second elder, so he said lightly, well, I met him, and I happened to have other things to do, so I asked him to do it. By the way, I'll see you again. Someone went to the other side. Who went out? These words were extremely precise. Naturally, the two guards could not understand the meaning of Zuyun's words. They thought it was a normal inquiry and said, the other one is the great elder. He has something important to do. He seems to be going to Yao State. Ye is who? Zuyun's pupils shrank and he said, what are you going to do in Yeazhu? Going to Yeazhu now will probably take a lot of time. The road connecting Yeazhu and Peeper Realm is thousands of miles away. I don't know. I heard that the sect leader left seclusion and the great elder went to Yeazhu. Another guard added. And Zuyun felt even more nervous. The elder is in the nascent soul stage, and there is also the sect leader. So, wouldn't it be better for me to leave first? Wu Qi saw his disguise when he was still half-infant. Although there is a special relationship with him, Zhen Wengxiu is his person. But coming here now, after all, there is a greater gap in realm. Just when he was about to quit and was about to leave on the pretext that he had something important to do, a hearty laughter suddenly came over him. Immediately afterwards, a figure appeared out of thin air in front of him. Zuyun was horrified. He had seen this person once in the air, but now this person was coming towards him, which had an even greater impact on his vision. Ha ha ha, Zhaibai, what a coincidence. The second elder just went out to look for you, and you came back. The person coming is none other than the third elder. Zuyun didn't know how to greet him. Although the third elder's spiritual power was restrained, he didn't show any aura. But the fluctuation of spiritual power caused by the teleportation just now is a glimpse of the leopard, it can be seen. Zuyun smiled bitterly in his heart, wondering if he should take action and escape for his life. Unexpectedly, 2 guards helped him get out of the siege. I've met the third elder. They both knelt down again. No gift. The third elder waved his hand casually, ignoring that Zuyun did not say hello to him. Instead, he excitedly pulled Zuyun and ran towards the inside, saying, I'll tell you good news. The sect master has left seclusion and has gone to Mu. The great elder has also gone to retrieve the demon refining tower. As long as he comes back, the sect leader will have the opportunity to obtain the wood spirit pearl from the wood spirit saint tree. Upon hearing the news, Zuyun was shocked again. He never imagined that the demon refining tower and the wood spirit pearl were connected together. Originally, he felt that his strength was somewhat insufficient, so he wanted to come here to find the wood spirit pearl. Just like at that time, the heart was fused with the fire spirit pearl, which suddenly helped him break through the pill formation stage. But in the end, I got such news. Why, are you very happy? As long as the sect leader obtains the demon refining tower and the wood spirit pearl, he can go to the spirit world. By then, our demon control holy sect will also have a backer in the spirit world. At that time, it will be the day when our demon control sect truly rises. Zuyun was shocked in his heart, but his face could only show excitement. Really? That's great. At this point, Zuyun was half happy. From the words of the third elder, it can be clearly heard that he wants the wood spirit pearl and needs the demon refining tower. The third elder went to Yeazhu to get the demon refining tower. But he knew that the demon refining tower was in the hands of that boy Zhu Feng. The most important thing is that Zhu Feng has also come to Peeper Realm, but he doesn't know where he is hiding. Based on his understanding of Zhu Feng, he must have hidden himself and secretly practiced magic. In this way, he was buying himself time to obtain the wood spirit orb in disguise. But, can I sneak into the wood spirit holy mountain? By the way, where is the sect leader? Zuyun came to his senses and asked quickly. This is his biggest concern. If the sect master is still there, then he has to find a way to leave. While he was unable to enter the holy mountain of wood spirit, he got the wood spirit pearl before him. The sect leader is not in the sect. Zuyun was ecstatic just after hearing this sentence, but the next sentence made his face turn ashen. He went to Muling Holy Mountain. Isn't there the demon refining tower yet? Why did he go to the wood spirit sacred mountain? The third elder laughed and said, the sect leader has gained a lot from this retreat. He can teleport up to 5 miles. And a few days ago, there seemed to be a mountain guard who could transform into a human form and many female cultivators at Muling Sacred Mountain. When we come back, the sect master is going to find out. It's not easy to get the wood spirit pearl, but it's also not easy for the ancestral tree to trap the sect master. Zuyun knew clearly that Mu Kingzin and the others were back. However, the reason why he recognized her as the Demon King was probably the same as his own thinking at that time, and it was also because Mu Kingzin was in human form. After thinking for a moment, Zuyun felt that it was not too late to find a way to leave here first and observe in secret. As long as they wait until their sect master comes back, he will enter the wood spirit sacred mountain again. Presumably, when he meets Mu Kingzin again in the mountains, she can at least help him say a few good words in front of the ancestral tree. What if ancestral tree's character is so great that he is willing to offer the wood spirit pearl with his own hands? Third elder, I'll go take a look too. Zuyun said suddenly. Where to go? The third elder was stunned. Of course it's the wood spirit sacred mountain. Zhu Yungang spoke and walked down the slope. This side goes down to the bottom of the valley, which is the Muling sacred mountain. Although Zhu Yun had never seen it before, the mountain in front of him was full of green and different from all the mountains he had seen. He originally wanted to fly over, but he was afraid that this would reveal himself. After all, Yu's Haibai is at the peak of the late stage of pill formation. But I am only in the early stages. The breath of spiritual power can be faked, but the intensity cannot. Haibai, no. The third elder quickly teleported and stood in front of Zhu Yun. Why not? Zhu Yun frowned deliberately. You are still weak and haven't reached the nascent soul yet, so you went to the wood spirit holy mountain. How do you get out of trouble if you are entangled by the mountain guards? That's it? Zhu Yun felt relieved and knew that if he wanted to convince the third elder, he would also need to show some real skills. He smiled slightly and used the thunder escape technique. The figure flashed and appeared 200 steps away. Huh! The third elder was startled, and then teleported in front of Zhu Yun in ecstasy. Okay, Zhaibai, you have actually learned this kind of escape technique? It is very mysterious, and it is no different from our teleportation in the nascent soul stage. Haha, that's natural. Zhu Yun laughed loudly and said, otherwise, how could I dare to go to Muling Holy Mountain? After that, it was another thunder escape technique. Unexpectedly, the third elder stopped in front of him again, looking embarrassed and shaking his head. Zhaibai, it still doesn't work. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 472. Zhu Yun's heart sank and he said, why? He had already thought that if the third elder really wanted to stop him, he would inevitably fall out. Of course, this fallout is also within limits. After all, Yu's Haibai is the acting sect leader of the sect, so he should have some face, right? Zhu Yun was thinking this, but the third elder was unyielding and said, Zhaibai, it's not that I don't let you go, it's actually you who was the first to ask about the sect master after he came out of seclusion. I'm afraid that when the sect master comes back, he won't be able to see you. You will get angry. Zhu Yun was stunned. He never expected this reason anyway. He simply said, no problem, I will go to Muling Holy Mountain to find the sect master. Doesn't this just show my sincerity? But no, it's no big deal. I'm really trapped by the mountain guard, so I just scream for help. The third elder was speechless for a while. But just like that, Zhu Yun had already escaped. That's all, he shook his head, watching Zhu Yun escape to the foot of the mountain not long after, and turned back to the main hall of the mountain gate. He knew what Yu's Haibai was capable of. Now that there are more escape techniques, there shouldn't be any big problems. The guardians of Muling Holy Mountain are only at the stage of forming pills. The reason why Yao Wuxi has been waiting for so many years, retreating in seclusion, and taking the demon refining tower, is that he actually has a bigger plot. If it was just for the wood spirit pearl, they would have taken action as early as when they trapped the wood spirit holy mountain. Zhu Yun escaped all the way to the bottom of the mountain. When he looked back, he breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the three elders had left. With a thought in his heart, he put a breath-containing charm on himself, completely suppressing his breath. Originally, when Yao Wuxi was not in the mountain, Zhu Yun planned to convert all his chaotic power into wood spiritual power to fill his body, so as to get close to these trees and enter them. But now, with such a powerful person here, he could only act with caution. Fortunately, Zhen Wengzio's breathing charm is very effective and can use spiritual power. Zhu Yun only needs to hide in the dark and wait for Yao Wuxi to come out and return to his clan. Not to mention, Zhu Yun used the wood escape technique and completely hid in a thick ancient tree. It looks more like a hidden whistle. At this time, at the top of Muling Holy Mountain, Yao Yuxi stood in front of a giant tree. This tree has strong roots and lush branches and leaves. But looking closer, you can see on the mottled bark that the giant tree has lived for many years. Zushu, old neighbor, I'm here to see you. Yao Yuxi said with an evil smile on his lips. Wow! A branch suddenly shook and made a sound, which seemed to be a response to Yao Yuxi. Miraculously, Yao Yuxi actually understood the meaning. Ancestor Shu, don't be so unkind. He still had a smile on his face and said, if you give me the wood spirit pearl, won't everything be fine? Wow! The giant tree seemed extremely angry, and its thick branches suddenly swung towards Yao Yuxi. However, Yao Yuxi's body turned into a shadow. After the branch passed through the body, the shadow solidified again. Old neighbor, do you think my ability to turn the imaginary into reality is much better than it was 10 years ago? On the contrary, looking at you, it seems that I have not improved at all. This time, Zusha chose silence and did not speak. Yao Yuxi didn't care, and said calmly, by the way, I heard that Zusha went to recruit troops. According to my subordinates, I saw a flying boat a few days ago, bringing many beauties. What, Zushu? Want to become a human and taste the beauty of human race? Such frivolous words made the ancestral tree angry again, and 3 branches wrapped around it from 3 directions. Ha ha ha, are you angry? Still don't like it? Yao Yuxi laughed loudly, swayed, and the branch fell down again. When Yao Yuxi appeared again, he had already landed a little further away. I'm so sorry, I almost forgot, you are not human, how could you like humans? Hearing this, Zusha became calm. But Yao Yuxi's next words made ancestral tree tremble all over, and the entire wood spirit sacred mountain seemed to be about to collapse. Since you are not a human being, do you like beasts? Just in case, my beast controlling space has thousands of monsters. What type do you like? And Zushu, faced with such humiliating words, finally spoke out. Yao Yuxi, don't bully others too much. Yo, are you finally willing to speak? Yao Yuxi smiled even more, touched her sickly and handsome face, and said, if I said something wrong, then you come and hit me. The ancestor tree was furious. But over the past 100 years, Yao Yuxi has already understood him clearly. At this distance, the branches of the ancestral tree cannot attack at all. But if spiritual power is used, I'm afraid a flaw will be found. The ancestral tree trembled for a few times, then calmed down. He said in a deep voice, Yao Yuxi, you don't have to bully me. The wood spirit beads are not mine. If you want them, you can only kill me. Otherwise, there will be no way possible. Yao Yuxi's face also darkened, and then he curled his lips and said, you are still in the realm of the Demon King after all. Although you are trapped here, it would be a pity to kill you like this. Zusha snorted coldly and said, whether I am the Demon King or not, what does it have to do with you? Anyway, if you want the wood spirit pearl, don't talk nonsense. Either do it or get out of here. Tisk, 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 Yao Yuxi shook his head, as if he was extremely regretful, but soon, he left a word and left. I've had enough joy for today. I'll surprise you again in a few days. After that, he did not hesitate, turned around and flew directly back to the demon control sect. This damn human race. At this time, a petite emerald green figure emerged from the canopy of the ancestral tree and made a face at Yao Yuxi. King Xin, Yao Yuxi deliberately made me angry. If I use my spiritual power, the origin of the wood spirit sacred mountain will also be moved, which will allow him to find an opportunity. But ancestral tree, this Yao Yuxi comes once every 10 years, and he just said he would come again in a few days. I'm afraid he has found a way to deal with you. Green Shadow's tone was full of worry. Humph, I have become one with the holy mountain. If he wants to touch me, he won't be able to cut me even if he is exhausted. Besides, I'm not standing still and letting him cut me. Xianxia said something disdainfully, and then asked, have the guests that your clone brought back been settled? Of course it's fine, but... Just what? Xiaoshu asked curiously, his tone and expression completely different from when Yao Wuxi spoke. In the clone's memory, it was said that someone wanted to come to Muling Holy Mountain. However, she refused. Oh, Xiaoshu asked in a provocative tone, who is it that also wants to come and get the wood spirit pearl? I didn't say that. Green shadow jumped down from the tree canopy and stood in front of the tree trunk. She raised her head slightly and said, anyway, I feel that it is different from the people who came here before. What's the difference? The ancestor tree didn't care, but said calmly, if you are really destined to come here, and he is not our enemy, just give him a fake wood spirit bead. Anyway, a clone of you is just a bead. That's what I said, but now. Before he finished speaking, Xianxia suddenly shouted in a deep voice, come back quickly, someone seems to have broken in. The green shadow was startled when he heard this, jumped up, and quickly sank into the tree trunk. Then, she immediately said, ancestral tree, who is here? How is your realm? Do you want me to send the mountain guards to find out the truth? No need, ancestral tree sighed and said, the person coming seems to have a single element of wood spirit root, and is proficient in wood element techniques. Your mountain guard can't stop him. What Xianxia said was exactly Zuyun. He noticed a black shadow flying away from the sky and went to the demon control holy section. He quickly used the wood escape technique and escaped through the trees. Moreover, escaping to the top of the mountain comes entirely from subconscious instinct. Until Zuyun discovered that a huge tree suddenly appeared in front of him, he couldn't help but remove the wood escape technique and looked at the tree in shock. It's not that the ancestral tree is too big. Instead, Zuyun felt the wood spiritual power from this tree that was almost as pure as his own. How much does it take to grow so big? Just when he was surprised, Xiaoshu suddenly spoke, which shocked him. Human monk, why did you come to our wood spirit sacred mountain? He quickly looked in the direction of the sound, and saw a face growing out of nowhere on the extremely thick tree trunk in front of him. Eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, everything. Are you an ancestral tree? Zuyun blurted out. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 473. That's right, human cultivator, I found that you have a very pure wood spirit energy. Are you here to find an opportunity? Xianxia asked slowly. Zuyun was even more surprised. He was the only one who knew the wood spirit energy in his body. And because of the relationship between the breath-suppressing talisman and the earth-changing talisman, even if there was a leak of spirit energy, it should be used high by spirit energy attribute. But I didn't expect that this ancestor tree could recognize it. But it seems. From the words, he didn't have any hostility. So, Zuyun simply agreed. Yes, senior ancestor tree. I came here to find the wood spirit bead. After the voice fell, a green shadow suddenly flashed in the tree canopy. Zuyun looked up and the green shadow had disappeared. Little guy, the wood spirit bead only waits for the destined person, and you are not. If possible, I can give you a fake wood spirit bead. Fake wood spirit bead. Zuyun frowned. This is not what he wants. At that time, he had a fake wood spirit bead in his hand. In the end, he sank it to the bottom of the volcano. Little guy, I have never given out a fake wood spirit bead in the past 100 years. You are the first one. Listening to the words of the ancestor tree, Zuyun did not comment. Whether you give it or not is none of my business. But since we are here and the conversation has come to this, Zuyun simply said, then Senior Zushu, how can I get the wood spirit pearl? Zushu was stunned, then laughed, and said, little guy, the wood spirit pearl is not something you can get just because you want it. The wood spirit pearl was asked by a senior to wait here, saying that it can only be given to someone who is destined to come in the future. And you, obviously not. Zuyun was not convinced and said, Senior Zushu, since you are here, it means that I am destined to you. Yes, you are destined to me. Zushu's words made Zuyun stunned, but then he said, so I can give you a fake wood spirit pearl. But you are not destined to that senior, so the wood spirit pearl cannot be given to you. So, after taking the fake wood spirit pearl, you should leave quickly. Otherwise, if Yao Wuxi comes, I am afraid you will be implicated by me. Yao Wuxi. Yes, the leader of the Yao Sheng zone, he also wants the wood spirit pearl, and uses it to go to the spirit world. Hearing this, Zuyun was shocked. Originally, he guessed that Yao Wuxi, like himself, obtained the fake wood spirit pearl just to improve his realm or improve his means. Unexpectedly, he went to the spirit world. Is there a connection between the wood spirit pearl and going to the spirit world? However, Zuyun quickly came to his senses. Because he was determined to get the wood spirit pearl, he would never let Yao Wuxi get it. Senior Zushu, please forgive me for speaking frankly. As far as I know, Yao Wuxi is already looking for a way to get the wood spirit pearl. Maybe in a few days, he will succeed. Oh. Zushu actually raised his eyebrows and said, you are not at a high level, but you know a lot. Then tell me, what method did he use and how did he succeed? Zuyun said seriously, I wonder if Senior Zushu has heard of the Demon Refining Tower. Demon Refining Tower. Zushu murmured a few words, and then exclaimed, Demon Refining Tower. Seeing his reaction, Zuyun was secretly happy, but he didn't dare to show anything on his face, but said, yes, it is the Demon Refining Tower. I came from Yaezhu and knew that the Demon Control Saint sect had sent a Yuanying stage person to Yaezhu and instructed a person in the late Jindan stage to refine the Demon Refining Tower. And I also got the news before coming here that Yao Wuxi had sent someone to meet the person who sent the tower. This is serious. Zushu's breathing became rapid. On the treetops, the petite green figure also poked her head out and looked at Zuyun from top to bottom. Don't dare to say a single word of falsehood. Zuyun felt that he had the upper hand, and he had the confidence to speak with a loud voice. I didn't expect it, I didn't expect it. He actually thought of the method of the Demon Refining Tower. What should I do, what should I do? The ancestral tree murmured to himself, showing his anxiety. At this time, the green figure spoke. The voice was extremely crisp and particularly pleasant. But listening carefully, it was somewhat similar to Mukingzin and Mukingzin. Are you from Yaezhu? Zuyun looked up, but saw a peerless figure. It was completely different from the peerless beauty of Sun Qiniang and Mengwei. Mengwei saw through life and death and tended to be indifferent. Sun Qiniang was influenced by Jian Tianming, and she was happy with love and hatred, sometimes cold and sometimes rough. I'm asking you, are you from Yaezhu? Another voice came. Zuyun suddenly came back to his senses and said, yes, fairy. Have you been to other states? Yes, I've been to Chuzhou and Yunzhou. Zuyun didn't know why, but he felt that this voice made him feel reluctant to say a word of falsehood, so he told the truth. You've been to all of them? Have you been to the Savage Sea? Yes. What kind of spiritual root are you? Wood, 5 spiritual roots. At this point, Zusha trembled all over. 5 spiritual roots, 5 spiritual roots. Mulu, He has 5 spiritual roots. Mulu is the name of the girl. Zushu, I know. Mulu didn't seem surprised, but jumped up from the tree and landed in front of Zuyun, looking at him curiously, and then said, I've seen you, do you want to see me too? Zuyun was stunned, not knowing what this meant. Mulu said, do you human cultivators like to disguise so much? Only then did Zuyun react. After a moment's hesitation, he tore off his own talisman of changing the world. I couldn't help but feel distressed in my heart. This talisman of changing the world and changing the world has not had much effect yet. But when I think about it, as long as I can get the wood spirit pearl, it's not a waste. Anyway, save the last one for the fire dragon sect. Well, take the wood spirit pearl, break through, and then go to the fire dragon sect. Zuyun made up his mind, but unexpectedly Mulu exclaimed. It's you. At this time, both Xiaoshu and Zuyun were surprised. Do you know him? Mulu pointed to his forehead and said, King Zin's memory. Zushu was stunned, but Zuyun was confused and asked, is it Mu King Zin? Yes, she just came back and brought back some sisters. By the way, she also brought back a dead man. Mulu doesn't seem to understand the ways of the world, and doesn't understand that the dead are the most important. Zuyun was speechless, and then listened to Mulu say, do you have any fire spirit beads on your body? Zuyun's eyes narrowed and he nodded. It is impossible for ordinary people to discover the fire spirit pearl on his body. Mulu didn't check his body, but he was able to ask this question. It seems. To obtain the wood spirit bead, you need a fire spirit bead. Mulu suddenly turned around excitedly and said to the ancestral tree, Ancestral tree, we found it, he is the destined person of Senior yet. Zushu also said with a face full of disbelief, I didn't expect that it would be like this. Little guy, you will make a lot of money now. Zuyun laughed dumbly. Xiaoshu's words were indeed correct. If he were an ordinary person, he would probably be rejected, right? Or, if you don't have the fire spirit pearl, you may not be able to do it right. Even if he had it, he would not have the idea of looking for the spirit pearl until it was integrated into his heart. Am I a destined person? Then can I get the wood spirit pearl? Zuyun was extremely excited. Since this wood spirit bead was kept for himself, there was no need to be polite. And the senior Ye that Mulu spoke of was probably Ye Yang. You know, the fire spirit bead on his body also had a great relationship with Ye Yang at that time. But in an instant, Zuyun suddenly remembered again. Is all this arranged by Ye Yang? Impossible. Such a coincidence. For a moment, he suddenly became panicked. Could it be that your destiny was arranged rather than fought for by yourself? But obviously, no one has ever interfered with my thoughts and decisions since I set foot on the path to immortality. Instantly, Zuyun's eyes became confused. Huh. At this time, Mulu let out a light sigh and said to Zuyun, what's wrong with you? Are you too happy to get the Muling bead? Zuyun shook his head. All he could think of was the word incredible, and he didn't know how to answer Mulu's question. Although, this question doesn't make much sense. Simply, he looked at Ancestral Tree and said, Senior Ancestral Tree, since I am the destined person of Senior Ye, can you hand over the wood spirit pearl to me? Please forgive me for being confused at this time. If you are not polite, please forgive me for the inconvenience. Zushu looked strange and said nothing. Zuyun didn't get a response for a long time and couldn't help but frowned. We agreed to be destined to be a destined person, but why didn't we give them the beads when we asked for them? Do you want to regret it? Just when he was about to ask another question, he heard the ancestral tree say quietly, little guy, Mulu is the Mulingzu. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 474. What? Zuyun was surprised. Wood green is the wood spirit bead. Can this also be practiced? Or is Mulu the bead spirit of the Muling bead? It was like, at that time, Mu Kingzin seemed to be able to store her soul in the pseudo-wood spirit bead. He, you will be my master from now on, you can take me away. Mulu, however, was quirky and held Zuyun's hand with a smile. Zuyun was not used to it and subconsciously wanted to let go. But he never thought that before he could throw away his hand would be empty. He looked quickly and found that there was a green bead in his palm, which exuded extremely pure wood spirit power. Just like the fire spirit pearl at that time. Zuyun was absent-minded again. Originally, in his plan, after obtaining the wood spirit bead, he would find a place to practice quietly, and integrate the wood spirit bead into the corresponding organs just like the heart fused with the fire spirit bead. The 5 elements correspond to the 5 internal organs, which is mentioned in the 5 Elements Kaya Sutra, but the key to cultivation was realized by himself. But this wood spirit bead is very different from the fire spirit bead. Because she can talk. When Zuyun thought about the future, a sentence suddenly came out of his own organs, and he felt very strange. For a while, I couldn't accept it. But obviously, neither ancestral tree nor Mulu knew what Zuyun was worried about. Little guy, Mulu followed you, and my mission has been completed. Leave quickly, it's time for me to leave too. The ancestral tree seemed a little reluctant to leave. Because the wood spirit bead is indeed different from other beads. Wood means life. Although Mulu is a wood spirit bead, his consciousness was born from the extremely large and pure spiritual power of the ancestral tree. Perhaps, even Ye Yang had never thought of this situation. Zuyun took a deep breath. No matter what, the wood spirit pearl will definitely be the key to his cultivation. So, he put away the wood spirit orb, and then asked, Senior Zushu, aren't you trapped here by the demon control holy sect? Zushu smiled heartily and said, yes, I am indeed trapped here by the demon control holy section, but it's not that I don't have a way to get out of the trap. It's just because I was entrusted by Senior Ye to protect Mulu. If I act rashly, if he uses his strength, Yao Wuxi will take advantage of the situation, so he has no choice but to let him set up a great array of monsters to trap the holy mountain. He is the peak of nascent soul, so why am I not the peak of the demon king? Having said this, Zusha showed his pride, completely different from his previous helplessness when facing Yao Wuxi. Zuyun was stunned for a moment, then became excited. I thought that if I took the wood spirit pearl and escaped, I would inevitably encounter Yao Wuxi. After all, he disguised himself as Yuz Haibai and went to the demon control holy sect, and he had returned to the sect before. If the third elder told him that Yuz Haibai had come to the Muling holy mountain, I'm afraid he would come looking for him again. At this time, the ancestral tree was not afraid of Yao Wuxi, and he obtained the wood spirit bead. Presumably, even if it wasn't for the sake of Mulingzhu, the grievances the ancestral tree had suffered over the years would still be recovered from Yao Wuxi, right? Just as he was thinking this, from the top of the mountain opposite, a black shadow suddenly teleported towards him. He had seen this black shadow once before, it was Yao Wuxi. However, when I went back, I flew, but when I came back this time, I teleported. This shows that Yao Wuxi is a little anxious. It makes a nascent soul ancestor anxious. Could it be that Yuz Haibai is Yao Wuxi's illegitimate son? Zuyun speculated secretly. After all, Yuz Haibai, a late-stage pill-forming person, could be the acting sect leader, while a Yuanying ancestor was still just an elder. Among them, Zuyun couldn't help but think wildly. Haibai, where are you? Show up quickly. Yao Wuxi's body appeared at the top of Muling Holy Mountain, and he started to shout loudly, as if he didn't take Yao Wuxi seriously at all. Under the cover of the huge canopy of the ancestral tree, Yao Wuxi could not see Zuyun. Yao Wuxi, didn't you say you would come in a few days? Why are you keeping your words? Xianxia finally felt that the opportunity to feel proud had arrived, so he retorted. It's a pity that his words didn't make any sense, and they couldn't anger Yao Yuxi at all. Humph, ancestral tree, have you seen the younger members of my clan? Yao Yuxi was also a little surprised, because Xianxia never took the initiative to speak. And he also took pleasure in provoking the ancestral tree to speak. Of course, more importantly, he wanted to let the ancestral tree attack him, so as to find a chance to break through. At this time, he was just looking for someone and not targeting him, but Xianxia wanted to ridicule him. Who am I to tell you? Xianxia asked back, but he didn't mean anything else. He just felt that being able to speak freely at this time was enough for him to be happy. Humph, you don't need to tell me, I'll find it myself. After saying that, Yao Yuxi flashed and disappeared out of thin air. When he appeared again, he was already standing in front of Zuyun. Yao Yuxi could not imagine that there were still people standing here in the ancestral tree. And Zuyun had no spiritual power fluctuation at all because he had attached the breathing charm. Just these two people, with big eyes and small eyes staring at each other, were stunned. But after all, Yao Yuxi is the most powerful person at the peak of the late nascent soul. When he caught a glimpse of the green light between Zuyun's palms, his pupils shrank and he reached out to grab it. Wood Spirit Pearl. He has been planning for this bead for decades. Therefore, in order to trap the Muling Holy Mountain, countless financial, material, and manpower were spent. Even not long ago, he had just left here, just to check out the so-called Demon King Mountain Guardian. But at this time, this wooden spirit bead was actually in the hands of an unknown junior. Zuyun didn't expect Yao Yuxi to make a move, or, he didn't have time to think about it, and his first reaction was to run away first. The fastest way is the thunder escape technique. Just when Yao Yuxi made a move, Zuyun also moved. Nascent soul. Yao Yuxi grabbed nothing with one hand. He didn't feel the spiritual power on Zuyun's body. Seeing that he also teleported, he naturally thought that this was a nascent soul stage using the breath-retaining method. But he was only one step away from the god transformation stage, and he really didn't take the ordinary nascent soul stage seriously. At most, he would spend some more time thinking. He looked in the direction where Zuyun was escaping, and saw that the distance was only 100 steps away, so he estimated that at most he was in the early stage of the nascent soul, which was far behind him. So what if it's nascent soul? I, Yao Yuxi, have killed so many nascent souls that I can't even count them with my hands. After saying that, his spiritual consciousness quickly emerged and rushed towards Zuyun. Zuyun was horrified. Before his spiritual consciousness arrived, the pressure had already made him extremely crazy. This kind of strength was simply not something he could contend with. Just this pressure made Zuyun unable to move. The spiritual power in his body was completely suppressed. Even though the seeds in his body were madly pouring spiritual power into his body, he couldn't use it at all. Even the thunder escape technique couldn't be used anymore. What kind of magical power is this? Just when Zuyun was about to be crushed into powder by the pressure when his spiritual consciousness arrived, suddenly there was a violent wind in the air. The whistling sound came, and the entire Muling Holy Mountain began to shake. Zuyun couldn't control his body at all, fell to the ground, and rolled down the slope to the foot of the mountain. If you dare to touch him, you must get through me first. It's the ancestral tree. Zuyun's eyes lit up, and he heard a deafening sound. Boom. While rolling, he only saw the ancestral tree uprooted, and countless branches collided with Yao Yuxi. Yao Yuxi, I have tolerated you for a long time. He was only responsible for protecting the wood spirit pearl. Now that the wood spirit pearl was given to Zuyun, the destined person, he had no scruples. After exerting all his strength, Yao Yuxi was actually repelled. Ancestor tree, if it weren't for the wood spirit pearl, How could you live safely until now? Yao Wuxi also shouted in anger, his hands kept dancing, dazzling. But the ancestral tree has countless branches. Regardless of thickness, they all swept towards Yao Wuxi. And Yao Wuxi is also amazingly powerful. Wherever his palm power reaches, the thinner branches will be broken immediately. At this time, Zuyun also hit a big rock and stopped. He was slightly stunned, and then he found that his body could move. Presumably, it was the ancestral tree that helped him block Yao Wuxi's pressure, or maybe he rolled out of Yao Wuxi's pressure range. He took a deep breath and performed the Breaking Void Spirit Eye technique without hesitation. A touch of clarity flashed in his eyes, and at the same time, he could barely see Yao Wuxi's movements clearly. Horrible, too terrifying. Zuyun was secretly shocked. The Breaking Void Spirit Eye technique had infinite uses, but that was all. It can only be said that Yao Wuxi was too strong. Looking at the ancestral tree again, he completely won because of the large number of branches, as if he had laid a net of heaven and earth, so that he could fight Yao Wuxi on equal terms. But in fact, as his branches became fewer and fewer, Yao Wuxi would definitely have the upper hand. By then, I'm afraid. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 475. Zuyun felt that it would be the best choice for him to do nothing at this time and just run away. Moreover, he was sure that he could escape safely. As long as he runs for more than 100 miles, he can find a place to hide in the immortal mansion. No matter how powerful Yao Wuxi is, he may not be able to find him. But in his heart, he couldn't bear to see the ancestral tree being slowly weakened, and finally dying in the hands of Yao Wuxi. The wood spirit pearl made ancestral Shu no longer have any worries, so he could use his full strength. But the same is true for Yao Wuxi. I should do something, otherwise I would be uneasy if the ancestral tree handed over the wood spirit pearl to me. Zuyun stood and looked into his storage bag. Tossing around, he threw some useful and real things into the immortal mansion. While he was rummaging around, his eyes suddenly lit up. Invisibility charm. This was also obtained from Zhen Wengziu. It's just that there is only one, and Zuyun has never used it, so I don't know how effective it is. The breath condensation talisman can suppress the breath. As long as it is not seen, it will not be discovered. Then coupled with the invisibility talisman, will it mean that it will not be discovered at all? Thinking of this, Zuyun decided to give it a try. However, after becoming invisible, he also had to be careful when approaching him. If his whereabouts were exposed, it would be over. At the same time, you also need to prepare means. Talisman is not feasible. With Yao Wuxi's strength, the moment the talisman comes out, it will immediately arouse alarm. Then use the Chaos Sword? No, the Chaos Sword is not fast enough. Under this situation, there is only Chaos Palm. Zuyun frowned and thought, he hadn't used Chaos Palm in a long time. Because usually the Chaos Sword can solve everything. Moreover, facing such a powerful enemy, I am afraid that I have to use all the chaos power to hurt Yao Wuxi, right? However, the shackles on the seed's outer skin will restrict the excessive use of spiritual power. Burning Sky Flame can also be used, but the key point is that facing the Den formation stage, Burning Sky Flame is more than enough, but at the nascent soul stage. Zuyun was afraid that Fen Tianyan would become a meat bun and beat up a dog, and he would be taken away instead of never coming back. He believed that Yao Wuxi's vision might be able to recognize Fen Tianyan's rank. In this case, it can only be Chaos Palm. However, Chaos Palm can only be used at close range. Zuyun took a deep breath, thought for a long time, and then decided. He didn't know where he got the courage to sneak attack a strong man who was at the peak of the late nascent soul. In fact, if there was no ancestral tree here, he would not dare to think like this. Moreover, he did not expect to kill Yao Wuxi with the Chaos Palm. The Chaos Palm can transcend levels, but beyond that it is only comparable to a nascent soul blow. Just imagine, even if Yao Wuxi stood still, would it be possible for him to be beaten to death by an ordinary nascent soul stage? Zhu Yun has a very clear understanding of himself. He only needs to hurt Yao Wuxi or interfere with him, as long as the ancestral tree has the upper hand. After looking inside his body, he found that the chaos force and seeds were all normal. Zhu Yun had pasted the invisibility talisman and the breath condensation talisman together. Suddenly, a mysterious feeling flowed throughout his body, and Zhu Yun felt as if he had merged into the aura of heaven and earth. Looks good. Zhu Yun felt happy and walked towards the hillside. Ancestral tree and Yao Wuxi have always been entangled. As he got closer and closer, Zhu Yun heard a loud bang in his ears. He knew it was the sound of his heart beating wildly. It can't be suppressed at all. Finally, Zhu Yun could see Yao Wuxi head on. And he also stopped. He was not sure whether he could be discovered, so he decided to wait and see for a while. There were only 30 or 40 steps left, and he had to be extremely energetic every step he took. If you are not careful, you will be in danger. Pulling himself together, Zhu Yun gradually approached Yao Wuxi. With every step he took, he felt his heart beating harder. But when he was only 10 steps closer, Yao Wuxi suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of Zhu Yun. Zhu Yun was suddenly startled. Could it be that he had been discovered? But in an instant, a thick branch of the ancestral tree suddenly flew between Yao Wuxi and Zhu Yun. Snort. Yao Wuxi snorted coldly and immediately slapped it away with his palm. But Zushi's eyes were looking at where Zhu Yun was standing with a vague expression. Zhu Yun was even more surprised. Could it be that a powerful person at the nascent soul stage could feel himself? But at this time, he also knew that the opportunity was fleeting. If he didn't give it a try now, he might never find such a good opportunity again. Even though Yao Wuxi was a little suspicious, Zushu seemed to have gone crazy at this moment, frantically running the extremely pure wood spiritual power in his body. But Zhu Yun had been using the void-breaking spiritual eye technique, and he could faintly see some clues. The ancestral tree seems to have turned its killing move into a trapping move. Zhu Yun suddenly realized it. He looked down and saw that he was stepping on the grass, and the origin of this entire holy mountain was connected to the ancestral tree. Moreover, he was not too far away from the ancestral tree. Perhaps because of this, he was discovered by the ancestral tree. That unreasonable blow just now was obviously Zushu trying to help Zhu Yun out of the siege. At this time, I want to change my difficult moves, and I want to cooperate with Zhu Yun. Zhu Yun's guess was correct. When he was more than 30 steps closer, Zushu discovered that Zhu Yun was back. But he couldn't see his figure, which meant that he deliberately used stealth methods. More importantly, Zhu Yun actually approached Yao Wuxi. This means that Zhu Yun wants to attack Yao Wuxi. Without lamenting Zhu Yun's courage, Zhu knew that he could only cooperate with Zhu Yun. Otherwise, Zhu Yun's life would be in danger. The arrow is on the string and must be shot. In order to protect Zhu Yun, Zhu attacks became more and more crazy. Yao Wuxi found something wrong. Are you crazy? In a short period of fighting, Zhu and he were equally strong. But as time goes by, Yao Wuxi will have the upper hand. But if Zhu improves his combat power in a short period of time, Yao Wuxi will be stretched. You actually burned your own origin, you must be crazy. You have lived for so many years, are you willing to die? Yao Wuxi snapped a branch and roared. And Zhu Yun's face was full of disbelief. Zhu got the upper hand, but at such a price? As he moved forward cautiously, his mind was spinning rapidly. He immediately realized that only in this way could the ancestral tree make Yao Wuxi so busy that he would ignore his approach. For a moment, Zhu Yun's mind suddenly became firm. although he didn't understand what burning the origin meant. But obviously, this would affect the lifespan of the ancestral tree. When he thought of this, Zuyun was already 5 steps away from Yao Wuxi. And Zuyun's attack was like a storm, with dozens of branches sweeping towards Yao Wuxi. Under his control, these branches completely blocked his front, left and right directions. Yao Wuxi either had to bear it or retreat in the direction of Zuyun. Ancestral tree, you dare! Looking at the branches that revealed the majestic spiritual power, which almost exhausted all his spiritual power, Yao Wuxi's face was full of disbelief. He knew that even if he carried it, he would end up in a lose-lose situation. At that time, he would be powerless to chase Zuyun, who had obtained the wood spirit pearl. Immediately, without any hesitation, he took 2 steps back. Zuyun took 2 steps forward. There was only 1 step between the two. Who? Yao Wuxi was indeed a powerful person at the peak of the late nascent soul stage. With just this step, he felt that the airflow around him was slightly different. Obviously, someone was coming. But when he looked back, he saw no one at all. He was only distracted for a moment, but suddenly realized that an extremely huge spiritual power was rushing towards him. Chaos Palm. With Zuyun's loud shout, his strongest palm actually shook off the effect of the invisibility talisman on him, completely exposing his figure. Boy, it's you. Feeling this power that could almost destroy the world, Yao Wuxi was horrified, and it was too late to teleport. In a flash, Yao Wuxi made the most correct decision. Get out of here. He rushed out with a palm. But this palm only used 50% of his spiritual power. It's not that he didn't want to use 100%, but it was simply too late. Boom. The 2 palms collided, and a terrifying power erupted. The grass and trees were scattered, and the sand and rocks flew. The surging and overflowing spiritual power even flipped all the branches of the ancestral tree back. The mountain shook, and a crack in the ground appeared under the feet of the 2 people who were facing each other, and no one knew how deep it was. Puff. Almost at the same time, both of them flew backwards. Zuyun spurted blood, and Yao Wuxi was not feeling well either. And he flew backwards in the direction of the ancestral tree. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 476. Bang. Bang. The first sound was made by Zuyun falling heavily to the ground. And the second sound. It was an extremely thick branch of the ancestral tree that blasted towards Yao Wuxi. Yao Wuxi was unable to resist at all. He was hit by the ancestral tree like a rubber ball and flew straight towards the direction of the demon-controlling saint sect. Zuyun Zhen was lying on the ground helplessly, watching Yao Wuxi being blasted back to his own mountain gate. He could even see that when Yao Wuxi fell, he destroyed a main hall and shocked countless monks to suddenly take off. Ahem. Zuyun wanted to laugh, but failed, and his face turned red from holding back. I wanted to stretch out my hand to calm the air, but found that my body had also suffered a lot of shock. At this time, my whole body was sore and I couldn't use any strength at all. At this time, he suddenly felt a squirm coming from the ground, and as the soil turned, he was pushed up. Huh. He let out a soft sigh and heard ancestral tree say, "Don't move, you are seriously injured, come to me." After saying that, Zuyun saw the ancestral tree getting closer and closer to him. It turned out that a root of the ancestral tree emerged from the ground and dragged him towards the branch crown of the ancestral tree. "Little guy, you are seriously injured." After putting Zuyun down gently, Zuyun sighed and said. Zuyun also smiled bitterly and said, "Yao Wuxi is very powerful, and he found the wood spirit pearl on me. If he doesn't take it back, he will give up. And there are several nascent soul stages in his sect, so I don't have a chance to run away. Xianxia sighed with emotion, you are too courageous, you actually want to sneak attack Yao Wuxi. However, you also surprised me, with this little strength, you can actually defeat Yao Wuxi. Zuyun didn't say anything. He knew that Xianxia had no ill intentions, and that the method of possibly overstepping his rank and hurting people was his trump card. But Xianxia didn't seem to care, and continued, however, he is seriously injured now, and it will not be possible for him to recover within 3 to 5 years. But he suffered the whipping from me and it is not that uncomfortable. As long as you recover, then you can leave. But don't they still have the nascent soul stage? Zuyun remembered that there was a third elder in the demon control holy sect. Just them. Even 100 of them won't be enough for me to fight. Ancestral Tree seemed quite disdainful and said, as long as Yao Wuxi doesn't come, no one can threaten you. Just let Mulu come out quickly, he can help you recover faster. Zuyun was stunned for a moment, but then understood. Wood means life. Some wood-type talismans also help the body recover. His injury is not considered an injury. He was more affected by the spiritual shock, and it was better to use the wood element than the water element, not to mention, he also had the wood spirit bead. But how does this work? Zuyun knew that he wouldn't be able to figure it out for a while, so he simply let Mulu come out. He stretched out his hand and took out the wood spirit pearl, and saw a flash of green light. The wood spirit pearl quickly transformed into a human form, it was the wood spirit. You are not old, but you are not timid. As soon as Mulu appeared, he said with a smile. Zuyun was speechless for a while, but he heard Xianxia say, hurry up and help him recover. Mulu smiled brightly at the ancestral tree, but her smile suddenly froze again. Ancestral tree, you. I'm fine. The ancestral tree swayed hurriedly, and the crown of the tree rustled. You injured your origin and used it a lot, you won't be able to survive for at least 3 years. Mulu's words were shocking, and Zuyun even ignored the pain on his body and said in a voiceless voice, Ancestral tree, how could this happen? From Yao Wuxi's reaction at that time, he knew that the price ancestral tree paid was not small. I also know that it will affect the longevity of the ancestral tree. I didn't expect it to be so heavy. The ancestral tree should not be a demon, but a spirit. You can feel it from his use of wood spiritual power. But whether they are demons or spirits, their longevity is extremely long. Especially trees have a natural advantage in their longevity. After becoming a spiritual tree or tree demon, their longevity is almost unlimited. But right now, the ancestral tree is about to die. Zuyun couldn't believe it. But he knew that Mulu was a wood spirit bead, so it was impossible to misread it. Moreover, he has been living with the ancestral tree for at least thousands of years. I'm tired of living. The ancestor tree looked indifferent, but comforted Mulu and said, I should have died thousands of years ago, but thanks to Senior Yeyong, I have lived for a few more thousand years. Now that I have completed what Senior Ye asked me to do, it doesn't matter whether you die or not. With that said, he didn't wait for Mulu to speak, and then said to Zuyun, little guy, please recover quickly. I can protect you in the old tree for a while. Those little babies in the nascent soul stage, if they come, I will. If you smoke a few, they won't dare come up. Zuyun was silent. The same goes for Wood Green. Obviously, as a woodling Zhu, she seems unable to solve the problem of the ancestral tree's origin being disturbed. Ancestral tree, is there nothing we can do? Is there nothing we can do? After a while, Mulu finally spoke, his voice choked with sobs. Of course there is a way, but unfortunately it's a bit difficult to do, so it means there isn't one. What can I do? As long as there is a way, there is a glimmer of hope. Zuyun and Mulu said almost in unison. Zirang. The ancestor tree smiled and said, "Xianxia is the treasure of our plants. However, I am too thick and big, and the quantity required is too much. But this thing, not to mention that it is not available in the mortal world, even if you go to the spiritual world, you may not find so much. A small handful will cause powerful cultivators to scramble for it. It's too difficult for you to want it." But Zuyun stared with his eyes full of disbelief. "He has Xianxia. It's in his medicine garden. And looking at the scope, it seems that the entire medicine garden is more than enough to plant the ancestor tree. Mulu, help me recover first." Zuyun took a deep breath and made a decision in his heart. After recovering, he would try to let the ancestor tree recognize him as the master, so that he could bring him into the fairy house. Mulu looked at Zuyun deeply, with some despair in his eyes. Having been with the ancestor tree for so long, the relationship is naturally deep. And Mulu has no power to protect himself, relying entirely on the protection of the ancestor tree. But now, knowing that the ancestor tree is about to die, it is inevitable that he feels a little reluctant. Looking at Zuyun, she sighed deeply and said, "Xiaoshu, I'll go first." After the words fell, Xiaoshu fell silent, but Zuyun was confused. Could it be that Mulu would die if he helped him recover? While wondering, he saw Mulu suddenly pounced on Zuyun. Zuyun was shocked. If she pounced head-on, not to mention the ambiguous posture, she would throw him to the ground. Who would have thought? When Mulu touched his body, she turned into a green light and the whole person melted into his body. Zuyun was shocked and felt an extremely pure wood spirit power quickly condensed and rushed to the lower left side of his lower abdomen. There is the liver. Zuyun didn't have time to think about it, and hurriedly sat down cross-legged, stabilized his body, and began to look inside. I saw that the whole liver was wrapped in a green light. And this green light was slowly shrinking into it, becoming more condensed. I don't know how long it took. The green light turned into a green bead, and turned back into the appearance of the wood spirit bead. Just looking at it like this, there is nothing unusual at all. Zuyun knew that the wood spirit bead was completely embedded in the liver, just like the fire spirit bead. Boom! Suddenly, when Zuyun was about to let his spiritual consciousness flow into the liver and take a good look at the wood spirit bead, a loud bang came from the liver. Before Zuyun could react, another green light shot out and rushed straight towards the seed in his lower abdomen. Boom! 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 After several loud noises, the green light rushed into the gap of the seed, and instantly stirred up the chaotic force in the seed. Soon, the lines outside the seed glowed. But the magical thing is that all the light that glowed was green, not the white light before. Zuyun was stunned. A feeling that he had never had before followed. Zuyun hurriedly looked towards the gap. I saw that a green sharp corner actually emerged from the gap. Is this sprouting? Zuyun took a deep breath, his face full of shock. This was something he could foresee, but he didn't expect it to come so quickly. Crack! Another crisp sound. Zuyun turned from surprise to joy. This is going to break through. With just one sentence in his mind, a huge amount of chaotic power surged out of the seed and flowed through his body. When spiritual power surges, the meridians will be expanded. This is how it felt the last time he broke through. Zuyun threw away all distracting thoughts and immersed himself in the breakthrough. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 477. The Demon Control Holy Sect. Yao Wuxi climbed up with difficulty. All around, there were disciples with terrified faces. Including the third elder. Sect Master. The third elder knelt down immediately. Although, he knew nothing. Sect Master. The rest of the disciples also knelt down behind the third elder. They were attracted by the collapse of the sect master's hall and thought that someone had attacked their demon control holy sect. Ahem. Yao Yuxi coughed twice, his handsome face was covered with bloodstains, and he looked very embarrassed. "Help me to the cave," he said to the third elder. "Yes, sect master." The third elder got up quickly and helped Yao Yuxi up carefully. "Notify AER to come back and seal the mountain first," Yao Yuxi said, panting. Zuyun's palm made him feel a little uncomfortable at most. At that time, in order to relieve the force, he chose to be knocked away. Just because he felt that Zuyun's spiritual power was extremely unusual. Unexpectedly, the ancestor tree took the opportunity to attack him. He could not bear the blow. Fortunately, the ancestor tree had shaken the origin before, so even if he attacked with all his strength, at least Yao Yuxi was not killed. "Yes, sect master." The third elder held Yao Yuxi in one hand and took out the sound transmission jade talisman from his bosom with the other hand. "Second elder, come back first, there is a change in the sect." The other end of the jade slip responded quickly. The third elder put away the jade talisman, concentrated on supporting Yao Yuxi, and came to the cave where he was in seclusion. "It will take at least half a month. Guard the sect and keep an eye on the holy mountain of Muling. Don't act rashly in any situation." Yao Yuxi let go of his hand and walked inside tremblingly. The third elder suddenly remembered something and said anxiously, "Master, where is Haibai?" Yao Yuxi's body shook, and then he said lightly, "I can't care so much, he is probably dead." "What?" The third elder was shocked, but saw that Yao Yuxi had already entered the cave, and the ban rose at the same time. He asked again but got no response. "Why is it like this?" The third elder sighed and went back to arrange the mountain closure. And in the distance, the second elder turned around and returned. The first elder was extremely confused. He heard what the third elder said. "Let the second elder go back, that means use Haibai is back." But the third elder clearly said that there was a change in the sect. What kind of change? It shouldn't be a big change, after all, he didn't let himself go back. Moreover, the sect master was also in the sect. The elder could not think that it was Yao Yuxi who was injured. He shook his head. Since there was no other order, he should quickly take back the demon refining tower and then return to the sect. At this time, Zhu Feng was walking towards the side. He had reached the Jindan stage and had heard about the Yao Sheng Zone. He thought that he could also control demons and seemed to be able to blend in. Because he could control the demon king, Lao Zhu. Under his request, Lao Zhu could completely hide his breath and become an ordinary demon beast, so that ordinary cultivators could not detect him at all. The important thing is that he heard that the Yao Sheng Zone was a big sect, so even if Zhu Yun came, he did not need to panic. With this thought in mind, he hurried all the way to the Yao Sheng Zone. At this moment, he was not far from the Yao Sheng Zone. He, I really pretended to be a pig and ate the tiger, right? Zhu Feng looked relaxed and showed a harmless smile. Along the way, he didn't know how many cultivators he had deceived. Anyone who looked down on him became part of his demonic spiritual power. At this time, Zhu Yun's body was also changing, but it was extremely slow. After several days, the flow of his spiritual power also slowed down. On the contrary, all the strength seemed to be restrained in the seed, just to make the small sharp horn grow more outward more likely. Zhu Yun had already passed the shock. Some things, since you can't change them, you can only choose to accept them. As the sharp horn grew, his guess was confirmed. This is a seed, and this sharp horn is the embryo. But for now, his body didn't feel anything abnormal. On the contrary, because his liver merged with the wood spirit bead, he had broken through to the middle stage of the Jindan. Apart from that, he could only watch quietly as the embryo grew hard at an extremely slow speed. He didn't know whether the embryo was to break the seed coat or to break the shackles. Anyway, neither of these two things changed. For a moment, Zuyun even thought of the embryo as himself. Himself walking in the world of immortal cultivation. Trying his best, he also wanted to explore a new world. However, he had already thought that the higher he went, the more insignificant he would feel. There is no turning back in immortal cultivation. No one can let go and return to the past calmly. Even he is the same. However, the only thing Zuyun can do is to maintain his original intention. Not to be polluted by this world of immortal cultivation. Many days passed in this contemplation. The embryo finally stopped moving. Zuyun also knew that he should wake up. He slowly opened his eyes. "Little guy, I didn't expect you to break through." The voice of the ancestor tree came to his ears. But why did this voice become much older? Zuyun stood up in surprise. The leaves around him had withered a lot. "Little one, after birth, old age, sickness and death, fallen leaves return to their roots. This is an eternal truth, there is no need to be sad. I am an old tree and have no regrets." Zushu saw what Zuyun was thinking and comforted him with a smile. Zuyun shook his head, but smiled slightly. "Senior Zushu, if you can live, will you still accept death?" Zushu laughed and said, "Little guy, if I can live, of course I don't want to die. But, I won't live until you find the time to let me live." Free and easy. Only these two words came to Zuyun's mind. This is how cultivating immortals should be. With admiration in his heart, he decided not to let the old tree die. Unless, he is determined to die. Of course, Zuyun had to ask questions about all this. "Senior Zushu, to be honest, I have a way to keep you alive, but..." "I also have a way," Zushu interrupted Zuyun's words and said, "I told you before. As long as there is enough breathing soil, I can survive. But in the mortal world, there should be no breathing soil. After being controlled by the demon before Shengzone was trapped, I was also looking for 11 soil, but I found nothing." Zuyun was surprised. He did not expect that the movement of Muling Sacred Mountain was due to this reason, so he asked strangely, "Senior Ancestral Tree, is he in urgent need of soil?" "No," Zushu said with a smile, "I'm just looking for it along the way." Zuyun was dumbfounded, then smiled, and said, "Ancestral Tree, what if I have breathing soil?" "You have." Ancestral Shu didn't believe it and said, "Little guy, do you know what 11 soil is? You are talking nonsense. Okay, now that you have recovered, get out of here quietly. Lashu and I have been observing the demon control holy sect these days. It seems that they are going to close the mountain, which means that Yao Wuxi is seriously injured. If you stay here any longer, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave even if you want to. The old tree is going to be bald, I can use it. There's not much spiritual power left." Zuyun said seriously, "Senior Zushu, I said I have breathing soil. Gun gun, why are you so annoyed?" The ancestral tree became angry and shook its branches loudly, and dropped another large piece of leaves that were not withered but somewhat dry. Suddenly, the air was silent. "Little guy, you have caused me to lose a lot of spiritual power again," Ancestral Tree said quietly. Zuyun couldn't laugh or cry, and said, "Senior Zushu, let's do this. If you accept me as your master, I will leave immediately. How about it? I can swear by the law of heaven." The ancestral tree sneered and said, "My old tree has killed more people than you have ever seen. The monks swear that dogs can give birth to pigs." Zuyun stroked his forehead, not knowing how to persuade the ancestral tree, but he heard the ancestral tree say, "However, if I can make you go away, I will accept you as my master, old tree. Anyway, I won't live long, so it's okay for you to have a good time." After saying that, ancestral tree shouted lowly, and instantly, a green light flashed all over his body. Then, the green light hit Zuyun's head and disappeared into it in the blink of an eye. The old tree has met its master. Ancestral Shu's teasing voice sounded in Zuyun's zifu. Zuyun grinned, he didn't expect you to be such an ancestral tree. Interesting, but also a bit disrespectful. I hope you will like Xianfu. Very well, let you follow me now. As soon as he finished speaking, the ancestral tree suddenly disappeared from the spot. And Zuyun also lost his feet, and his whole person fell downwards. Why is the holy mountain of wood spirit gone? I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 478. While thinking, Zuyun turned over in the air, and then slowly fell to the ground. Originally, this was the location of the wood spirit holy mountain, but it seemed that this place had become a valley. Zuyun looked in the direction of the demon control holy sect, and without hesitation used the earth escape technique to completely hide his body in the earth, and then headed north. After hiding in the earth for about an hour, Zuyun finally came out. There were still mountains all around. He looked around and found that this place was rarely visited. Then he flashed into the immortal mansion, turned to the pasture, and immediately rushed to the lake. However, after arriving at the lake, he found nothing. It was the same as before. Hey, where is this? Zuyun was full of doubts. According to his usual experience, as long as he took it in, it would definitely be at the lake. Why didn't he see anything this time? Master. At this time, Sangu came forward and asked, carrying a stick on his shoulder, which was given to him by Zuyun at that time. He saw Zuyun when he first came, but at that time, he was driving some puppets, but when he saw Zuyun was a little confused, he walked over. Have you smelled other breaths in this space? Zuyun's eyes lit up, he knew that Sangu had a sensitive nose and might be able to find it. Sangu sniffed carefully, and then said, it seems to have a little smell, a little fragrant, in. After a little hesitation, Sangu pointed to the north, at the other end of the lake. It's a bit far, at least dozens of miles away. Zuyun was overjoyed, in the pasture, no matter how far it is, it's not far. He patted Sangu and flew over there. Not long after, he really saw a small hill. It can even be vaguely seen that there is a giant tree on the top of the mountain. Thinking, it is undoubtedly the ancestral tree. Little fellow master, this is, your beast control space. The name of the ancestor beast to Zuyun was ridiculous, but his tone was a little solemn. I guess so, what's wrong, ancestor tree? Zuyun landed and asked. The spiritual energy here seems to be a little different. The ancestor tree shook its dry trunk, and a bunch of half-dried leaves fell down again. Zuyun didn't understand. The ancestor tree said, look at the ground. Zuyun looked down and was shocked. I saw that those half-dried leaves turned into burnt yellow quickly and then sank into the soil again. Fallen leaves returned to their roots. Instantly, these 4 words appeared in Zuyun's mind. However, he still didn't quite understand what the ancestor tree meant. This is not a beast control space, but a world. The ancestor tree took a deep breath and said to Zuyun. Zuyun nodded and said, yes, this is indeed a space. He had nothing to deny, and he would even bring Xirang to the ancestor tree later. So, you have Xirang, and you are in this world. The tone of Zusha became a little anxious and excited. Mine, but not here, can you still hold on? Zuyun asked while looking at Zusha's state. I found that his spirit seemed to be no different from before. That is to say, the vitality no longer dissipates. I can hold on. The spiritual energy here seems to be different from that in the outside world. It is more beneficial to my growth. However, I have already used the origin, which hurts the root. Only the powerful vitality contained in Xirang can make me recover faster and save my life. Then wait a moment, I'll get some. After Zuyun finished speaking, he immediately left the ranch and ran towards the medicine garden. At this time, Xianxia sighed deeply. Das Han, what do you think? Old friend, this little guy has an incredible secret. The voice came from the feet of Xianxia. It turned out that it was Muling Shengshan who was speaking. Why do you think so? You are well informed, even I am not as good as you. You and I are connected by our origin. You were sent in by him, so I came in too. But you don't know that I have become a part of this world now. What? Hearing what Muling Shengshan said, Xianxia was also shocked. I said, I have become a part of this world and can no longer be separated. So, your vitality has dissipated a little slower. Otherwise, do you think that just by absorbing the spiritual power of the air here, you can stop the cost of using the origin? Xianxia was silent, and Muling Shengshan continued, this is definitely not an ordinary small world. As for how mysterious it is, I can't recognize it. I can only say that you have found a good master. Xiaoxiu's heart was in turmoil and could not calm down for a long time. For a long while. Das Han added, also, the mountain guards and their friends have also come in. I wonder what the little guy will think when he finds out. After he finished speaking, Muling Holy Mountain suddenly shook again, and a cave suddenly appeared on one side of the hillside. Led by Mu Kingxin, several female cultivators walked out of it. It turned out to be Le Nu, who was rescued by Zuyun from Qingnu town. They didn't know what happened, and their faces were still somewhat frightened. However, seeing that the surrounding environment had changed, they couldn't help but turn to confusion. This is... Mu Kingxin looked around and then ran to the ancestral tree. I've met Master Xianxia. May I ask, are we out of the control of the demon-controlling saint sect? She said with some excitement. So be it. Xianxia nodded and said, I have recognized you as the master, and this is his beast control space, but he doesn't know your existence yet. Now, what are your plans? Hearing this, Mu Kingxin was stunned. Is this the beast controlling space? That's not bad. Because she is also a tree demon herself. But the problem is, the ancestral tree actually recognizes people as its master? She opened her mouth, not knowing what to say. Are you worried about your friends? Xianxia saw through what Mu Kingxin was thinking at a glance. Mu Kingxin is actually a tree demon transformed from a fake wood spirit bead. Xianxia understands her. Yes, Master Xianxia. Mu Kingxin bowed, she turned back slightly and glanced at her companions who had been imprisoned together for decades. I thought that coming here would be a paradise. Who would have thought that now they can't go anywhere? Mu Kingxin was filled with guilt. Sister Mu, I think this place is good. Not only is it full of spiritual energy, but also, there doesn't seem to be any danger. One of the girls said. Yes, sister, I think it's good too. At least you can practice with peace of mind, right? Yes, it is unbelievable that Senior Ancestral Tree considers the Lord. But obviously, Senior Ancestral Tree's master must be an easy talker. Yes, I think so too, that Senior will definitely let us practice here. No big deal, let's play it for our seniors to listen to. Listening to the words of these sisters, Mu Qing felt dumbfounded. But there were some things she knew she couldn't say. He is a demon and knows the significance of the existence of the beast controlling space. But they are all humans. Sighing, Mu Kingxin was about to tell the truth about the consequences when she heard Muling Holy Mountain speak. It's a big place and it's really nice to stay here. Mu Kingxin swallowed her words immediately. She always knew that the mountains could talk, and she also knew that the mountains were more mysterious than the ancestral trees. Now that he has spoken, he has nothing to say, so he can only say, in that case, let's stay here. At this time, Zuyun dug a lot of soil. After learning from Huang Longshu that as long as the soil here is not dug out, it will fill up again, he dug half of it and counted it. With these elixirs, they can already directly swallow and absorb the chaos power in the void for their own use, and the effect of 11 soil is not great for them. At first, they were somewhat afraid of Zuyun, so Zirang was just their hiding place. Now that they are familiar with Zuyun, they have nothing to worry about. Regardless of whether Zuyun is there or not, they will usually sit at the edge of the void. Half of the medicine garden was empty. Zuyun dug up a lot of the soil in this half. After re-entering the ranch, Zuyun flew away non-stop. He already knew the location of Muling's sacred mountain, and there was no need to go to the lake for Sangu to confirm. Soon, he saw the wood spirit sacred mountain again. Only this time, there were a few more figures on the mountain. Zuyun was a little stunned. Strange, is there anyone here? Could it be that they were the people who stayed when the secret realm merged? Impossible. At that time, many people were teleported out of the ranch, including himself, who was teleported back to Yunzhou. Where did that come from? Zuyun was thinking while flying quickly. By the way, isn't it said that there is a mountain guardian? A mountain guardian transformed from a fake wood spirit bead. Thinking of this, Zuyun's eyes lit up, and he happened to fly to the top of the mountain at this time, and he landed directly. The ancestral tree is more important at this time. As for knowing the mountain guardian, let's put it aside for now. The ancestral tree, I brought it to fertilize the soil. Zuyun smiled and took off a storage bag from his waist, flipped through the bag and poured it towards the root of the tree. Wow! The soil poured out of the storage bag like a torrent. The ancestral tree stared, watching the soil slowly covering some of its exposed tree roots, and at the same time feeling the powerful vitality that it needed. The soil is a treasure for flowers, plants, and trees. Even the most common weeds, as long as they are planted in the soil, can become fine even if no one takes care of them and spends some time. Not to mention, the ancestral tree is a spiritual creature and has lived for thousands of years. The energy contained in it is the icing on the cake for him. Zuyun's soil spread a thick layer around the ancestral tree. The ancestral tree came to life at a speed visible to the naked eye. Green buds bloomed on the dry branches. Yes, it's really useful. Zuyun was overjoyed. But his face tightened again. How similar was the emergence of these green sprouts to the germination process of the seed in his body? Almost, Zuyun had a bold idea. If so, take out your own seeds from your body and bury them in the soil. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 479. Yun, fellow deist Yun. At this time, a crisp voice interrupted Zuyun's thoughts. He looked back and slapped his forehead. Why didn't he think of them? Mu Kingzin, long time no see. Have you been on this mountain? Zuyun said with a smile, but then his face became a little ugly. Because he also found the problem. Mu Kingzin is a tree demon and the guardian of Muling Holy Mountain. It is understandable that he came in. But why did the other girls come in? This. Zuyun didn't know how to speak for a while. He had only one thought in his mind. On the ranch, only those who recognize themselves as the master can stay here. And obviously, those girls, I didn't let them recognize me as the master. Could it be? An incredible idea popped up in Zuyun's mind. Could it be that I saved them and wanted to stop Wuchideo alone to let them escape, so that they subconsciously regarded me as the master? Impossible. Zuyun's eyes widened suddenly, but there seemed to be no better explanation than this. And now, it seems that he can't drive them away. Sighing, Zuyun said, "Do you feel uncomfortable?" He thought in his heart that if these girls wanted to go out, he would send them out. But if they wanted to stay here, they could only stay. No, no, we think it's great here. One of the girls said. Yes, benefactor, we think it's good. Sister Mew said that this is your beast control space. I think it must be safe. Safe. Zuyun didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and said, there are some monsters and 2 monster kings to the south. Do you still feel safe? What? Not only these girls, but even Xiaoshu was shocked. Little guy master, you said there are monster kings here. Zuyun nodded and said, a horse monster and a dragon monster are both at the level of monster king. Not only that, there are also some monsters comparable to the Jindan stage, and dozens of puppets without self-awareness. Their strength is also at the Jindan stage. Hearing this, Xiaoshu took a breath. Afterwards, he smiled bitterly and said, it seems that the destined person that Senior Ye said is not weak. Zuyun touched his nose. He couldn't respond to this. At this time, Muling Shengshan suddenly spoke, saying, this place is very big. If there are more creatures, the space will become even larger. Who is talking? A strange voice suddenly came out, and Zuyun was shocked. It's me. Zuyun then realized that the voice came from under his feet, and immediately looked down. I am Muling Shengshan. You can talk. Zuyun was surprised, but soon relieved. Because the ancestor tree just mentioned Yayong. And what Yayong remembered most deeply was those 8 words: grass, trees, monsters and stones can all become immortals. Since Muling Shengshan can share the origin with the ancestor tree, it is not surprising that it can talk. Then, Zuyun asked, you mean, this space can get bigger? Of course, said Muling Shengshan, this space is extremely mysterious, and I am connected to this world. I can feel the growth of this world, which is a little bigger than when I first came in. But now it has stopped growing. Zuyun was shocked. As the owner of the ranch and the fairy house, he didn't even know how big this ranch was. But Muling Shengshan, he said he was connected to this ranch? And he himself has consciousness, so he knows more than himself? Suddenly, Zuyun was overjoyed and hurriedly said, then what else do you know? Muling Shengshan said, I don't know anything else. If this world is round, I can't tell how big it is. I can only say that you will go all the way north and finally return here. Round. Zuyun felt incredible and subconsciously looked into the distance. But it was clearly a plain. The ranch had no mountains or rivers, it was all flat land. At most, there were some low-lying slopes. Even the lake was formed by a sudden torrential rain, which gathered in the low-lying areas. But he felt it was incredible to say that this world was round. That's all I know. This place is round. As for why it is so, I don't understand. This is your world, not mine. It's just that I am a part of this world now. Muling Shengshan's words made Zuyun fall into deep thought again. He knew nothing. Perhaps, if he wanted to know more in the future, he could ask this mountain more. What should I call you? Zuyun asked. Just call me Da Shan, Muling Shengshan said, or, call me by the name you originally called this world. The name is just a code name. Zuyun nodded, then turned to look at the group of women musicians and said, since you want to stay here, then stay with peace of mind. Neither the Demon King nor the other demon beasts will hurt you. After that, he said goodbye to everyone. Next, he needed to go to the lake and talk to the 2 demon kings. He did not allow the people here to have conflicts. Even, subconsciously, Zuyun hoped that they would not have any conflicts. Arrived at the lake. He called Lao Ma, Jinxiao, Zhao Kamang, 3 dogs, and the red candle beast. There is a mountain on the north side, there are trees on the mountain, and there are people under the trees. You don't want to scare them, do you understand? Zuyun said with a solemn expression. Yes, master. It was rare for them to see Zuyun look so serious, so they immediately agreed. After giving the instructions, Zuyun left and returned to the immortal mansion. Sighing, he also walked to the edge of the void and sat in a row with the elixirs. Just as he sat down, Huang Longshu came from the other side and waved his branches towards Zuyun. Zuyun understood that Huang Longshu had something to say to him, so he immediately turned into a metal spirit body. Zuyun, you have the aura of chaos, which seems to be different from the one in the void. As soon as Huang Longshu spoke, Zhuanko also said, indeed, I feel it too. It is a bit more intense than when I first broke through. Hongyi seemed to have a more sensitive sense and said, on the contrary, I feel that there is an aura in your body that is very similar to ours. And this aura makes me a little scared. Zuyun was stunned. Do you have any misunderstanding about fear? I won't hurt you. Last time I wanted to refine the Xiao Yuan Dan, but I only obtained 3 leaves after asking for the consent of purple Yuan grass. Hongyi said that, and I think so too. Huang Longshu nodded, and then said, because of this, I asked Zuyun if there is anything unusual about this breakthrough. Zuyun immediately thought of the seeds in his belly. Originally, he would not reveal the secret to anyone. But at this time, when Huang Longshu, the 3 longest-lived elixir trees, asked about it, Zuyun just hesitated a little and nodded. After looking at the rest of the elixirs, Zuyun sighed, stood up and said, follow me. Huang Longshu knew that the situation was serious and said, then go to Jianshan Mountain and tell us. Zuyun stood up and ran towards the top of Sword Mountain. Huang Longshu and the others also followed closely. Sitting down next to the Chaos Sword, Zuyun said, do you know the realm of human beings in the mortal world? Zhuanko and Hongyi shook their heads, but Huang Longshu said, I only know that mortals need to refine spiritual energy to practice, so it is called the Qi refining period. After that, it is necessary to condense these spiritual powers and build them in the Danshan Taoist stage. Once you practice Taoist stage, you can condense your spiritual power and form the golden elixir. Zuyun, you should be in the elixir forming stage at this time. Zuyun nodded and smiled bitterly, and said, yes, I am in the elixir forming stage, but now, what I have in my belly is not a golden elixir, but a seed. Seed. The 3 elixirs looked at each other. I only heard that if they successfully practice the elixir, they can transform into humans. I have never heard of people cultivating seeds. Will the seeds sprout again and turn people into elixirs? Zuyun said again, do you have spiritual consciousness? If you do, enter my body and have a look, and you will know. Zhuanko and Rainbow Leaf both said no, while Huang Longshu pondered for a while and said, I can do it, but it may take 5,000 years of Taoism. Zuyun looked gloomy and said, if it's inappropriate, then that's it. That's not what I mean, Huang Longshu said, what I mean is that if Taoism goes back 5,000 years, my spiritual wisdom will also fade away. If you have any questions, I can't help you answer them. Ah! Zuyun was suspicious, and then suddenly realized that he was thinking wrongly. Huang Longshu didn't care about his own cultivation, but he was the most knowledgeable among these elixirs, and he was the first to be planted here by the immortal emperor. Even before being picked by the immortal emperor, he had been practicing for countless years. However, I see that you seem to be troubled by this, and it may affect your cultivation in the future, so I decided to help you take a look. If you can find a spiritual object that can help me accelerate my growth in the future, you can help me again. Huang Longshu comforted Zuyun instead. What he said makes sense. I am indeed troubled by the germination of the seeds. So he nodded and said, tell me if there is anything that can be helpful to you, and I will definitely help you find it when the time comes. Zhuanko smiled and said, the most precious treasure of our elixir is the breath's oil. But now that we have become spirits, the effect of the breath's oil is not great. So we need the wood spirit bead. Wood spirit pearl. Zhu Yun's eyes suddenly widened. Yes, the wood spirit pearl. There are 5 elements in the world, and there are spirit beads in the 5 elements. For each attribute, the spirit pearl is the most precious treasure. As long as I am placed in the wood spirit pearl, I can recover faster. Huang Longshu said with a smile, but the wood spirit pearl is difficult to find. I once heard the previous master say that he searched 3,000 mortal worlds and never found a spirit pearl, let alone a wood spirit pearl. Zhu Yun took a deep breath and then returned to his human form. He concentrated slightly, immersing all his consciousness in his liver. Under his control, the wood lingzhi slowly detached from the liver, and then slowly flew out from Zhu Yun's left lower abdomen. Wood spirit bead. Huang Longshu and the other 3 medicines all exclaimed in unison. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 480. Zhu Yun, who had transformed into a human form, could not understand the exclamations of Huang Longshu and other elixirs, but from the tone of the voice, he could completely understand the shock of these elixirs at this time. He smiled slightly, took the wood spirit pearl back into his body, and then turned into a metal spirit body again. Zhu Yun, you actually have the wood spirit pearl. Huang Longshu said very excitedly. This is something I just got, it didn't take long. It seems that I can enter your body and explore it. As he spoke, Huang Longshu's tone also became serious. This matter is no small matter. If you are not careful, there will be great risks for both Zhu Yun and Huang Longshu. How to enter? What preparations do I need to make? Zhu Yun also forced himself to calm down. Because the seeds are related to whether he can continue to practice in the future. If he didn't figure this out, he wouldn't be able to do other things with peace of mind. Huang Longshu said, you don't need to do anything, just relax your mind and let my tree spirit come in. Zhu Yun nodded and was about to return to his human form when he heard Huang Longshu continue, wait a moment. After I have finished investigating, you can listen to me in detail. At that time, I will consume a lot of energy. And my spiritual power will collapse within a stick of incense, and I will no longer be able to communicate with you. So, you need to take me into the wood spirit pearl quickly. In this way, maybe I don't need to spend 5,000 years of Taoism. After everything was said, Zhu Yun returned to his human form, sat cross-legged on the ground, and relaxed. In front of you. Rainbow leaves and purple grass also stood on both sides of the yellow dragon tree. I saw that the yellow dragon tree suddenly swayed, and the few leaves on it rustled. Sudden. Zhu Yun saw a looming dragon-shaped shadow suddenly appear above the yellow dragon tree and rush towards his head. Zhu Yun was shocked, but he quickly focused his attention. He was afraid that if he was a little negligent, it would affect Huang Longshu. Just as he was getting ready, Huang Longshu drilled straight into his head. Suddenly, Zhu Yun felt a sense of coolness, starting from his forehead and going straight into his lower abdomen. This coolness was indescribably comfortable, but before Zhu Yun had time to enjoy it, he saw that the coolness had already enveloped his seed. This is. Feeling the strong power above, Zhu Yun was a little frightened for a moment. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he actually felt that Huang Longshu was much stronger than him. How is this possible? Obviously, looking at the Huang Long tree, it is just a magical medicine. If he was stronger than me, why would he always hide in the medicine garden when he saw himself before? While Zhu Yun was puzzled, Huang Longshu's power faded instantly. He clearly felt that this power retreated along the original path, emerged from his head, and flew back to Huang Longshu. However, Zhu Yun discovered that the dragon-shaped shadow had become much thinner. If before, the shadow was as thick as a forearm, then now, it only has a little finger at most. Zhu Yun had no time to ask, but he immediately turned into a metal spirit body. He knew that with every breath he saved, Huang Longshu would recover faster. Zuyun, good news or bad news, which one do you want to hear? Huang Longshu's tone was extremely weak. Zuyun only cared about Huang Longshu's safety and didn't think about how to choose. He said directly, let's tell the bad news first. The bad news is that the seed in your body is indeed a seed, and it will sprout. If you cannot control the growth of the seed and completely master it, then you will become it in the future. Zuyun was shocked and asked, what about the good news? The good news is. Huang Longshu paused for a moment, then said in a deep voice, maybe, this kind of seed is a strange species in the immortal world. I can't tell exactly what kind of strange species it is, but at least, this kind of seed will make your immortal path smooth. Zuyun was extremely shocked when he heard this. But he couldn't be happy. Because the bad news is, he needs to master this kind of thing. But the problem is, he doesn't even know what this kind of thing is now. Moreover, this is something he got from practicing the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra. Wait, 5 elements? Suddenly, Zuyun's eyes lit up, as if he had caught something vaguely in his mind. However, in his desperation, he couldn't remember it for a while. For now, let's collect the Huanglong tree into the wood spirit pearl first. Thinking of this, Zuyun quickly said, I'll figure this out myself first. At least it's safe now. Huang Longshu said, perhaps, when this seed germinates a little more, rainbow leaf or purple yuanko will be able to recognize it. Previously, the familiarity we felt in you can prove that this alien species is not an evil thing. You can rest assured about this. Zuyun nodded when he saw Ziwanko and Hong Yi, and felt a little relieved. He turned back to his human form and used the wood spirit pearl again. With a little use of spiritual power, the wood spirit pearl emitted a green light and directly absorbed the yellow dragon tree. It was as if the fire spirit pearl at that time had taken Fentianyan in. Afterwards, Zuyun continued to sit on the ground, thinking hard about how the seeds came from. There is no such explanation in the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra. It just tells Zuyun to practice step by step. Every time you reach a certain level of cultivation, you can see the corresponding font on the page of the exercise. If you want to solve your doubts, you can only continue practicing. But if he reaches the next level of cultivation, the seeds will germinate directly in his body. So what? So, obvious. The appearance of seeds is related to the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra, but the immortal who created this technique probably did not expect it. So, what kind of practice did I have? Did I deviate slightly from the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra? Zuyun thought in reverse, touched his belly, and looked at the chaos force in the void. When it was still in the foundation building stage, the chaos force was normal. So far, he has been practicing according to the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra. The variables generated, or those outside the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra, are the chaotic power in the void. It stands to reason that the chaos power is that he absorbs the spiritual power of various attributes in the air, and after refining it, transforms it into chaos power and stores it in his danshan. But he directly absorbed the power of chaos. This is one of them. The second is that his heart is fused with the fire spirit bead. The 5 elements and 5 internal organs are only mentioned a little bit in the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra, but there is no mention of the consequences of doing so. After thinking for a long time, Zuyun only found these 2 reasons. Then thinking from this point of view, Zuyun feels that the impact of the chaos force in the void may be greater. The seed is his golden elixir. It was caused by absorbing the chaotic power here when he broke through. As for why this is the case, Zuyun still doesn't know. But Huang Longshu gave an answer. Xenogeneic. Alien species formed by the condensed power of chaos, and alien species from the fairy world. So. But call it chaos species. It is a thing from the fairy world. Also exists in chaos. Perhaps, Only after arriving in the fairy world can we truly find out why this alien species appeared. But the problem has returned to itself. Does he still want to continue practicing? Zuyun thought about it again at this time, and seemed to already have the answer in his heart. If you don't practice, how can you master this species of chaos? Originally, the power of the chaos seed came from his chaos power. If the chaos species has self-awareness, it wants to influence me. Then, I will simply cut off his chaos power. Thinking of this, Zuyun's worries suddenly disappeared. He touched his lower abdomen. Huang Longshu had to pay a huge price to help him find the answer to all of this. Don't worry, I can practice with peace of mind. When the time comes, I will release you as soon as possible. Zuyun smiled slightly and then stood up. Nodding slightly to the rainbow leaves and purple grass, he turned back into his human form. Now that this thought has been put aside, the next thing to do is to go to the Fire Dragon sect. Zuyun left the Immortal Mansion and had just broken through to the middle stage of pill formation. He no longer had any worries and felt relaxed all over. I saw him rising into the air and heading quickly towards the Fire Dragon sect. At this time, Zhu Feng walked all the way to the Demon Control sect. However, the second elder had just returned at this time and also landed at the mountain gate. Huh? Little kid, who are you and why do you come to our holy sect? The second elder only remembered that the third elder said that the sect had changed, so he took another look at Zhu Feng. One is very young, but is in the realm of forming the core. Looking at the entire Peepa realm, he is also a rare talent. Is it possible that the changes in the sect have something to do with him? During this question, the second elder looked directly at Zhu Feng. Whenever Zhu Feng showed something amiss, he would immediately kill him. Meet senior. It was the first time for Zuyun to see nascent soul stage at such a close distance. Not to mention the inexplicable aura of a superior person in those words, just the look in his eyes made Zhu Feng feel as if he had been completely seen through. He knelt down. It is not about praying for mercy and showing respect. Instead, he wanted to avoid the second elder's gaze. Explain. The second elder's eyes narrowed, and just one word brought with it such overwhelming pressure that Zhu Feng could not get up at all. Back to, senior, I have been practicing demon control since I was a child. I heard that the demon control sect is the most powerful sect among the demon control sections. I admired it so much that I thought about joining the sect. The second elder raised his eyebrows and remained skeptical. But now that he didn't know what was going on with the sect, and there was no one on duty at the mountain gate, he decided to arrest Zhu Feng first. But at this time, two figures hurried over. I met the second elder, and the third elder told me that when you come back, hurry over. The second elder nodded and said, you arrest him first and then talk about it. By the way, do you know what happened to the sect? One of the guards said, back to the second elder, I heard from the third elder that the sect leader went to Muling Holy Mountain to find the acting sect leader, but the acting sect leader did not come back. Instead, the sect leader was beaten back and was seriously injured and went into seclusion. What? The second elder's eyes widened, and a boundless aura surged out, shocking the two disciples of the mountain sect and taking a few steps back before they regained their balance. Second elder, it's better to go meet the third elder quickly. The disciple needs to seal the mountain gate. Snort. The second elder knew clearly that it had nothing to do with these two disciples, but the shock in his heart could not be greater. How powerful Yao Wuxi is, would he not know? How come I went to Muling Holy Mountain and was beaten back? Could it be that the ancestral tree did it? Impossible, how could this ancestral tree have such strength? He didn't believe it in his heart, but he crossed the mountain gate and quickly ran to the top of the mountain to look in the direction of Muling Holy Mountain. Just by looking at it, he was horrified and shouted, where is the mountain?